State has started, Jack. Let's go in for closings.
Mass murder in Marion. Linda Parker, Kiana Ryan, and Brent Brown. Ambushed, bludgeoned, and left bleeding on a concrete floor in Long Brown's outbuilding. There's blood, just a lot of blood. That's what Matt Brown told 911 dispatchers when he arrived at his father's property after being summoned there. Initially believed to be carbon monoxide poisoning. But as soon as first responders arrived, they knew that wasn't the case. Trooper Fairbanks said it best. Carbon monoxide does not cause your face to collapse. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. Lacerated, abraded contusions, hemorrhaging, skull fractures. These are the types of injuries that our medical examiner described most commonly seen in high velocity, high impact vehicle collisions. But for Roe and Amanda and Kiana and Brent, there was no vehicle. There was only Luke Truesdell and a metal pipe. What the evidence showed you in this case, ladies and gentlemen, is that on June 5th, Lon Brown was at home at 3699 East Otter Road in Marion, Iowa, which is in Lynn County. That he was just finishing up his lunch when the defendant pulled into his driveway, parked out in front of his house, and got out of that vehicle with his dad, Larry Truesdell. Brent and Kiana were home that day too. Brent and Kiana were planting flowers, trying to improve the landscaping, enjoying a nice sunny but windy June day. Roe went to pick up Amanda from work. You see them later arrive on that green motorcycle, where they also interacted with Brent and Kiana when they were outside, where eventually the defendant met them in that front yard area. And that surveillance video captured their last few moments. Wait, Michelle, come here. Roe and Amanda are walking towards the entrance of that outbuilding. Larry and Luke also enter the screen. As Lon told you, Luke was sent out to check out that inboard motor on that boat. He wanted him to part it and get that boat out of there. And that's exactly where Larry headed. Luke followed the same path into that outbuilding that Ramondis Cooper and Amanda Parker went. That's the last time that anybody saw Ramondis Cooper alive. Amanda came back out. Drink in hand, stop to talk to Brent, talk to Kiana, went back in that outbuilding. Never to be seen alive again. But that's not the last time that we hear Amanda. And I know the acoustics in this courtroom are terrible, and there's a balance between using the overhead speakers and using a sound bar. But I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that when you take this evidence back into the deliberations room, you'll be able to hear it better. And you're going to be able to hear that break in the wind, and hear Amanda scream. Hours, 23:41, I believe is the timestamp that I want you to listen to in that exhibit. Where just for that brief moment, that wind breaks and you hear it. Brent and Kiana heard it. Stopped them in their tracks. And they went to check it out. And as they're going into that outbuilding, Luke Truesdell comes out, does an about face, and follows them in. The last time you see them alive.
Coming up, we're going to have more from the closing arguments in the metal pipe massacre trial for Luke Truesdell. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Kelly Craft. We begin this hour in Iowa, where closing arguments are underway in the metal pipe massacre trial. The defendant in this case, Luke Truesdell, is accused of brutally murdering 4 people back in June of 2024. Now, all 4 victims were found dead inside a detached garage. They had been beaten to death with a metal pipe. Let's get you back into court now. More of the state's closing argument.
Holding on and fighting for his life when first responders arrived, but as far as meaningful life, that's it. Now, this is zoomed in on this area. And it's grainy. But what you're going to see in this video clip is Luke Truesdell's head come to this back area where he meets up with his father. There it is. And he stays out there for a minute and a half, telling his dad what happened. And Larry goes to check it out. You're going to see another head, Larry, come back towards the outbuilding, and then you're going to see Luke Truesdell, the defendant, appear between that SUV and that van. There's Luke. And there goes Larry. Lots of surveillance video footage in this case, ladies and gentlemen. After Luke and Larry leave that outbuilding, you're going to see on the video that they come to the house. Larry goes in first, Luke right behind him. Larry comes right back out and heads back up to that outbuilding. But then he comes back. He comes back down to the house. And again, I encourage you to listen to the evidence when you get back there, because you're just not going to get a clear picture of what is said on these videos in this courtroom. State's Exhibit 6.3. State's Exhibit 6.3 is a screen record of the surveillance system. And you got the two different camera angles at the same time, and the officer was manipulating the mouse and toggling back and forth between video, and you see an actual time bar running across the bottom of the screen. That's where you're going to find this video. 1 hour, 41 minutes, and 40 seconds into that video is this scene. And when I say 1 hour, 41 minutes, and 40 seconds, that's the not actual time in the video, but the amount of time that's elapsed for that exhibit. You're going to hear Larry. When he runs in that door, the first thing out of his mouth is, "Call the ambulance right now." You hear somebody say, "I don't know"? You hear Jesus. Call an ambulance. And then you hear Larry say, What do you mean you don't know? Lon Brown described that interaction. He described Larry being in Luke's face, that he was 1.5 inches from him. He can't recall what he heard, but he described Larry coming in there in a panic, telling him to call 911, call an ambulance, get him out here now. And how did he describe the defendant? In a daze, mumbling to himself, not making eye contact, kind of incoherent, while Larry's doing damage control for his son. Luke Truesdell told the detectives, Payne and Egley, I came out here. Lon asked me to go check on Brent because he wasn't answering his phone. Okay. I walked out, opened the door. Well, which door did you open? The swinging door. The walk-through door? Yep. On this side? No, in the center. In the middle there? Yes. Okay. Defendant says, I seen a body laying there, and I turned around and walked out. Detective Payne says, did you go? You didn't go in or anything like that? The defendant just shakes his head. Yeah. You went in and what? What happened? Tell me about it. I hit them each. You hit each of them? Well, what did you say that you hit them. What did you hit them with? Right inside the door on the right is a metal bar. We saw that metal bar. And we saw photos of where that metal bar was located. Right inside that swinging entry door on the right, where Luke Truesdell told the investigators that they would find it. That outbuilding is huge. You get some perspective on how big it is between the body cams of officers going in and the Faro scan that we presented you. Huge and full. And that one black metal pipe sitting right there could have been overlooked. Especially because at the onset, the investigators still weren't sure what caused the injuries. They didn't know what they were looking for. But fortunately, the defendant told him right where his murder weapon was. Right inside that right door. Right there. 42 inches. 42 inches. That pipe. That I encourage you, when you go back to deliberate, even if you choose not to touch the pipe itself, Lift that box. See how heavy that metal pipe is. And then ask yourselves, is that a dangerous weapon? What did we find out about the pipe? We found out that on the pipe there was DNA. And whose DNA did we find? We found different types of DNA. We found blood evidence belonging to Ramondis Cooper and Kiana Ryan. We found other DNA that was considered to be a minor contributor to the spots that the criminalist decided to swab that were unidentifiable because there were not enough points or loci within that DNA to confirm whom it belonged to. But I don't think anybody is doubting that that is the same type that struck all 4 victims, considering that the paint from the end of that pipe is embedded in each one of their skulls. The criminalist sat up here and explained to you, ladies and gentlemen, why she makes the decisions that she makes and how she is familiar enough with blood evidence to be able to look at stains and make an educated and an expert guess as to which stains are going to provide the cleanest samples. That if she tested every spot, that the testing would go on infinitely, and that's not how she does her job. Blood evidence. Ramondis Cooper, Kiana Ryan. You know who else's DNA was on that pipe? The defendant's. And the defendant's DNA wasn't in a random place on that pipe. It wasn't somehow mixed in with the blood. It wasn't a random hair. The criminalist explained to you that one end of that 42-inch long pipe was bloody. You see it. And that the other end did not appear to have any blood on it. But what she did, and you can see it when you examine this pipe, is she found a rough surface, a spot where she thought it would create the most friction from somebody's hand. Because to get touch DNA and to get skin cells, it's easier to get them from a place in which it's friction and rubs off. And she swabs that area. And in that area...
Very solid closing argument so far by the prosecutor out there in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We're going to head to break soon, but we do have some developments in another story we've been following. This is about former NFL star Antonio Brown. He is out of jail after posting $25,000 bail. Brown hugged his attorney outside the Miami jail. He is charged in connection with a shooting incident in Miami that took place earlier this year, where he allegedly fired 2 shots. The victim claims one of the bullets grazed his neck. Brown has pleaded not guilty. He must also wear a GPS ankle monitor. We will keep you posted on any new developments in that case. We'll be right back with more after this quick break.
A former porn actor caught in a deadly father-son love triangle.
I'm not going to stop fighting to prove my innocence.
The Love Triangle beheading trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, did this former adult film star decapitate the father of her children? We're unpacking today's testimony in the Love Triangle beheading trial.
Closing Arguments tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Back now to Iowa, where closing arguments are underway in the Metal Pipe Massacre trial. Defendant Luke Truesdell is accused of beating to death 4 people last summer. Truesdell allegedly told police that he had done it to make a movie and that his head felt better after committing the murders. Let's get you back into the courtroom now. More of the state's closing argument.
And in that area on the non-bloody end of the pipe, where someone would hold the pipe to swing it as a weapon, she found the defendant's DNA. And then the hair, Kiana's hair. 40-some strands of hair, 37 didn't have roots. She tested the root and the shaft, and her conclusion after doing DNA analysis on the hair that was on that pipe is that the hair belongs to Kiana Ryan. Now, officers continued to speak with the defendant when they transported him to the Lynn County Sheriff's Office for additional investigatory work. And in that car, y'all heard it, he says that he's been up for 2 days, hasn't slept in 2 days, that he's been smoking methamphetamine. 2 days awake, some sort of a meth-induced bender. He's got a lot to talk about. He talks about his past and his grandmother and how he got strung out again after his grandma died and how things are real hard on him and people stole money from him and people tried to run him off a bike 6-7 months ago. It just goes on and on, this ramble. But there are definite points of clarity in that ramble that the defendant went on. The defendant talks about how he loves his babies and they're going to hate him forever after this. How they, being the folks out on Otter Road, were sex trafficking women through a drug ring, that his killing those people, maybe drugs were a factor. It's got to do with a lot. He needs help. And that he wanted to take them all down. The other things he said while he was in that car, when there was some conversation about whether or not Luke gets his methamphetamine from Roe. I don't know his name. I don't know his real name. I just know what they call him. Well, the black guy that you hit. Oh, yeah. Him. The black guy that I hit with a metal pole and left laying there bleeding, dead. When asked if Amanda said anything as he chased her back in that corner where he got her stuck between that sawhorse and that wall, did Amanda say anything? Well, what'd she say? No, no, no. No, no, no. No, no, no. No, 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 as you have just brutally beaten and bludgeoned her boyfriend and have chased her into a corner where she can't escape and gets wedged, and her herself is then beaten and bludgeoned to death. No, no, no. Ladies and gentlemen, in these instructions that Judge Dupuy just read to you, you're going to get what we call marshalling instructions, and it's going to be a lot clearer when you can see it in front of you. It's broken down by count, okay? Each count has a different victim, and each count has what are those called lesser included offenses, where you get to consider first, murder in the first degree, murder in the second degree, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, for each victim, each count. And they are labeled well, so it should be easy to navigate through them once you can see them. But the elements for murder in the first degree don't change per victim. The only thing that changes is the name associated with it. So for the state to prove the crime of first-degree murder, we have to first prove that on June 5th, 2024, the defendant hit the victims, insert name, with a metal pipe. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that when you go back and review the evidence and review your notes and deliberate together, that there is no explanation that is reasonable other than Luke Truesdell beat and bludgeoned those 4 people to death with a metal pipe. The metal pipe that he directed investigators to, that hit each of them that he admitted. That the victims died as a result of being hit with a metal pipe. Those autopsy photos were tough. And Dr. Diol did a good job of explaining how to correlate certain injuries to the documented evidence of injury in his report. You saw it. There's no question that the pipe that hit them repeatedly in the head was their cause of death. That the defendant acted with malice aforethought, and that the defendant acted willfully, deliberately, premeditatedly, and with a specific intent to kill the victims. So what is malice, and what is malice aforethought? Malice is a state of mind. And what you're going to see in the instructions is that it says, a state of mind which leads one to intentionally do a wrongful act to the injury of another, whether that's out of actual hatred or with an evil or unlawful purpose. Wrongful act, striking someone in the head with a metal pipe. You don't strike someone in the head with a metal pipe if you don't have some actual hatred or have an evil, unlawful purpose behind it. Talks about us being able to establish evidence of actual hatred or by proof of deliberate or fixed intent to do injury. I didn't clean my PowerPoint up. It may be found from the acts of conduct that the defendant did and the means used in doing the wrongful and injurious act. It only requires such deliberation that would make a person appreciate and understand the nature of the act and its consequences. This is not an act done in the heat of passion. And what you're going to see in these instructions is that you get an instruction on voluntary manslaughter. Voluntary manslaughter.
Let's go ahead and bring in our guest this hour to discuss what we have been seeing in the closing arguments there. Joining us from Tampa, Florida, former prosecutor and constitutional attorney, Chris Ann Hall. Chris Ann, nice to see you. Tell us what you think of the
Thank you so
closing.
much.
Yeah, nice to see you. Closing arguments underway there in this case. I think the prosecutor is really doing a solid job laying out the evidence and talking about the elements and what a prosecutor has to prove in order to secure the conviction. But give me your take.
Well, and that's really the key, because we're not arguing whether he did this or not. The argument is, was it intentional or was it not? And so the prosecution is going to bring forward this understanding that this was a massacre, not a moment of drug-induced madness. It was methodical. It was thought out. It was intentional. And in Iowa, there is a statute that allows for a mitigation of charges for voluntary intoxication. It's not a defense, but it's a limitation. And so voluntary intoxication doesn't actually excuse a murder, but the defense, if they can show that the meth was so extreme that he couldn't form intent, it could drop the charge from first degree to something less. But here's the catch. He said, somebody asked him, why did you do this? He's like, to be honest, I did this to make a movie. And that's a typical methamphetamine-induced response. These kind of visions of grandeur backed by hallucinations. But if the meth then, and it proves intent, right? Mm-hmm. So if the meth destroys intent, it can reduce guilt. But if the meth creates intent, that seals it. You don't get to hide behind the meth because it created the intent. The law says you can't escape accountability for motive born out of a high you chose to take. And this case seems to me very simple for the jury. He admitted it. He has talked over and over about his intent, and Iowa statute does not allow you to escape accountability for drug-induced highs.
Christiane, thank you. That was really helpful. I like that explanation. I appreciate it.